Okay. At this time, we'll be taking a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. And so we're going to open up at this point to public comments. According to the public comment policy, there are 3 individuals that have signed up to make a comment in person. The first one, I'll call up Erica Great Simmons. Yes, ma'am.
Here, but she asked that I go first.
Your name?
I'm Tamara Cole.
Okay.
I'm Tamara Cole. I wear a multitude of hats, but the one that I wear today is that of
Ma'am,
a
I'm
former-
sorry. This is our first time, so I've made a mistake. I have to have a second on the motion for the agenda.
Seconded.
Okay. And then we vote.
This is Courtney. I vote aye.
Are we still waiting? Okay.
I didn't get a box. Ah.
Does everyone see their vote reflected properly? Okay, we will convene, Ms. Tamara. Pamela? Tamara.
Tamra.
All right, thank you for being patient.
No problem. My name is Tamara Cole, and as I stated before, I wear a multitude of hats, but today the hat that I wear is that of a former English teacher and also an advocate of parents, but most of all, an advocate of students. It has come to my attention most recently that when some of our students are expelled from school, they are left without the option to attend other institutions of learning. That is very concerning to me because when you have a child who is left without an option to attend another institution of learning, what are they supposed to do? In my mind, it states that our children are disposable because we're setting ourselves up for them to become menaces to society. So I think that we need to get back to the way things used to be, where people recognized that our children needed more than just someone coming into a classroom and teaching content, but also teaching character, where we work together as a community and wrapped our arms around these young people, no matter where they came from, no matter what their circumstances may be, but to show them that they matter. Our children are not disposable. They are people, they are souls, they count, and we need to do better in the way that we handle them. Thank you.
So, Ms. Tamara, right?
Yes.
Does that mean Erica Great Simmons is not coming forward?
She's here. She just
Okay,
asked that I
okay,
speak
you just
first.
switched places? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Erica, would you like to come forward now?
Good afternoon, kind of sick. My name is Erica Great, and I'm in here on behalf of expulsion. I truly believe that children that's going to be expelled have a higher rate of actually having criminal, I'm kind of nervous, having criminal
among
records
friends.
in the future. Research showed that when children are suspended or expelled from school is a negative outcome later in life. And these negative outcomes include lower educational achievements, lower graduation rates, lower college enrollments, and higher involvement in juvenile and adult criminal justice systems. As a master prepared registered nurse, I see this every day when I'm working with my nursing students. And so I truly believe making sure that these children are able to stay in school to provide a better education for them will be a win, not only for the teachers, but also to let the students know that they are being valued and most importantly, being heard. Thank you.
And now I'd like to call forward Cynthia Grant.
Greetings, all. My name is Dr. Grant, and I'm here on behalf of the children who are up for expulsion. And my perspective is, if we're going to say that children are our future, and if we put weight on education, and if we expel them from school, then how can they be our future? What future would they contribute to without an education? And I'm also here to support the idea that, yes, society has presented a lot of issues for our children. And if we are not solution-oriented, then what are we? So we say they are our future, then how are we helping them to be better than where we came from or where things appear to be headed? So solution-oriented. Is expulsion and a solution to a child who wants and desire education? Or is that a solution for the adults in the classroom or the administrator to get that child off of their campus? So if you're going to expel them, put them somewhere else where they can still have the privilege of getting an education, but don't just throw them out there and say, oh, children are the future. Okay, thank you.
Ladies, I want to thank you for your input, and I may be going rogue here, but I also share your concerns and have been in communication with some of the city officials in North Charleston. There's a opportunity school, John De La Howe in McCormick, South Carolina, and I may be speaking out of turn, but I'm looking at what possibilities and opportunities we would have to create a facility like that here, where they can get comprehensive help that they need to break out of the patterns that they've gotten themselves into, with many of them have led to them facing expulsion. So my heart is with you, and I definitely hear you. I share your concern. Just know that we are working behind the scenes to help you with this. Judge Seymour, is it typically prudent to ask the other board members if they want to weigh in?
That would be fine.
Okay, Ms. Cynthia, you wanted to say one more thing?
Yes, you mentioned John De La Howe. That is a resource place, it is, but it also costs money. So you also have to look at how would you fund the children that, if you're
Yes,
gonna have
ma'am.
a facility that's gonna be funded by another organization, funded by the parents, how would funding be?
Yes, ma'am. I've actually been in communication with Mr. Grabowski
Okay.
about that very thing, and he has a lot more resources concerning the subject. Just know that we are behind the scenes trying to work out a solution for you.
I
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Would any other board members like to weigh in on these comments?
Think you covered it.
Good. Okay. All right, then we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the overview of early childhood learning. And we will be hearing today from Ms. Kimberly Foxworth. I'm sorry? We're referring them to the regular board meeting. I'm glad you pointed it out, Mr. Kennedy. The online comments that have come in, we've got you. We're gonna just address all of those during the regular board member. That gives people a little bit more time to weigh in online, and then we'll address them all at one time. Okay, so Ms. Kimberly Foxworthy, she's the Executive Director of Early Childhood School Readiness. Her background She's going to provide an overview of the November 30th Early Childhood Symposium. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you, Ms. Watley. Board Chair McKinney, Vice Chair Bailey, members of the Board of Trustees, Superintendent Kennedy, and guests. My name is Kim Foxworth. I'm excited to share the highlights and summary of the Early Learning Kindergarten Readiness Symposium that we held on November 30th at the Gilliard Center. I'm starting this presentation with the same way I started welcoming the guests at the symposium, with the planning team's overarching goal was to bring the community together around kindergarten readiness. The purpose of the symposium was, the theme of the symposium was strengthening the foundation for student success. And it really is going to take a village, our whole community, to ensure that all students are ready for kindergarten. Because we're all in this together, it is going to take stakeholders, all the stakeholders you see on this slide, to make sure students are ready for kindergarten. And therefore, the participants, attendees of the symposium, were those who were on the slide. We had members of the school board, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Our constituent boards were represented. We had nonprofits, we had childcare providers, childcare directors, and many others, colleges and universities. And it was an exciting event to see people from different stakeholders groups around the table to talk about kindergarten readiness. From the keynote to every session, everything in the symposium was tied to one of these three objectives. The first objective we wanted to cover was to grow a collaborative network. Parents have a choice in what's most appropriate early learning environment for their child. And so that is why it was really important to bring childcare providers from the private sector, our public school sectors, others around the table. So we're not the only providers of early childhood in our community, so it's important that we're all together. The second was around making sure that anybody who's serving kids in our community, are you having some kind of using common resource and definition around kindergarten readiness. And so the profile, the Ready Kindergartner, and the South Carolina Early Learning Standards are tools from our state that help us define kindergarten readiness. And we just had conversations. We had representatives from the state who talked about these tools to make sure that not only is our school district using it, but anybody who serves 4-year-olds are using those tools. And then the third objective is to acknowledge that as a community, we need to remove any barrier that prevents any child from being ready for kindergarten. And so we want all children to have access to high quality early learning opportunities. We want to talked about removing barriers to cost. If the child has a disability, that we talked about the childcare desert that we have in our community, socioeconomic, racial, ethnic. So we just covered that. So those are the symposium objectives that I think we did pretty well covering. And so here's some facts about the symposium. We had over 100 participants. We purposely kept it small because we wanted to have an intimate conversation with our stakeholders. We had a diverse group of attendees and presenters. Thank you, Dr. Temple, for attending. We offered renewal credit not only for our CCSD employees, but it was important to offer renewal credit for providers. They use SC Endeavors to get their credit. And so that was enticing to them. So that showed that we were a real partner by offering them the credit that they need for their jobs. We had a keynote address by Jill Dent, Mississippi Department of Education. She's in charge of all of early childhood for the state of Mississippi. And she walked us through the steps it took for Mississippi to get to where they are in terms of student outcomes. And the three things that she hit were the importance of establishing policies, coaching in the classroom, and high quality professional development. Some of the symposium sessions that I didn't list all of them. We have extra brochures if you want to see all the sessions, but the highlight here are some of the symposium sessions that we had. And out of all of them were very high quality and got positive feedback. But I would say that the preschool bus that actually came from Beaufort County was one of the highlights. Definitely the panel, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, was a highlight. And then Dr. Reggie Williams from SC State, who did talk about scaling the wall and addressing the top 10 barriers to addressing early childhood kindergarten readiness. He was also very influential, and he had a great message. So those were some highlights. And then the panel discussion, that was probably one of the things that I was looking most forward to hearing and participating in, because it's very rare that we can get all different kinds of people who have an impact on early childhood in the same room. So the panel was facilitated by Dr. Jackie McLemore, and it was a cross-section of early learning stakeholders in our community. If you note there, we had a childcare director, we had a principal, we had a leader of a nonprofit organization that has worked heavily in kindergarten readiness. We had the state director of First Steps 4K, which is the state's 4K funding in childcare center. And then we had a member, somebody from the colleges, universities. It was an excellent discussion, and they talked about the most important challenges and shared ideas about how to shift and to how to really work together versus having silos and working independently, or how, although we're in different entities, public school, private childcare, whatever, that there's opportunities for us to work together. So that was a great discussion. And then I just wanted to share a couple of quotes. We're still reviewing the feedback, but you can see the mention of the preschool school bus was there. It was very positive. And just overall positive. And I just wanted to see if Dr. Temple, did you want to say a few words about your time in your participation in the symposium?
I'd be glad to. Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed being at the symposium. It was well worth the time, and it was obvious that so much effort really went into the conference. It was very comprehensive. And when I was asked if I would want to say anything, I reflected on this. We've come a long way on early childhood education. In 1978, where children had a few hours in our kindergarten programs in our public schools, and it was optional, and students weren't taught reading awareness until first grade. We've come a long, long way. Add to that the lack of childcare facilities for parents like me who could teach if my children could be in a certified daycare. I was impressed with the speakers. The Mississippi efforts to address learning were really important, and I hope that we can share those with the legislators from our community. And it was impressive to hear more about the Mary Ford Center, where children were not in a separate program from Head Start, but rather integrated with CCSD's efforts. The number of attendees was impressive. I mean, people were very enthusiastic about the conference. So it was just a really nice combination of advocates and potential existing partnerships, along with the expertise that was evidenced from CCSD. The most concerning is still that we have 42% of our children in Charleston are in an early childhood desert. And I believe that the research is showing that early childhood education is a key factor here if we're trying to achieve the goals that we've set forward in our goals and guardrails. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Temple. And that was pretty astounding to me when Ms. Strickland from the State Department shared that, and that just has me even more focused to make sure that we really make sure our programming is where it needs to be. Thank you. So I'll just end with 2 more slides around our next steps. So our next steps directly from the symposium are in January. We're going to seek input from the Interfaith Roundtable on possible partnerships around supporting early learning. Ms. Strickland and I have been in conversations for a long time, but we're going to put in action about doing some joint professional development in the spring with the First Steps 4K teacher. Wouldn't it be amazing to have teachers from the Child Care Center, some of our teachers, and even kindergarten teachers around the table to have conversations about what readiness really looks like? We had the opportunity to have the leaders around, but now it's time to get the practitioners around the table. So we're really excited about that. Obviously, we had a lot of interest in the preschool bus, so we can research some opportunities to see how that could be utilized in our community. Like Beaufort County, we have rural, we're very long, and this preschool bus goes into those communities and does outreach and basically brings a classroom to them if they're not able to come to us. And so I think there's opportunities that we could research here in Charleston County. And then, as we always do, we're going to continue our partnerships with local childcare providers and other community stakeholders around early learning. And then just a reminder about where we are in our district with expansion is that in January, we're going to open definitely 2 infant toddler classes at Minnie Hughes. One will open pretty early in January. The second will all depends on when the construction is finished. And then we are also opening at least one 4K class at Laurel Hill. It all depends how many families on the waiting list from District 2 are still interested at this point. It's not that they're not interested, it's just if you have your child already in a place that you feel safe, you at this point, you don't want to change them. So it's not a matter of the want, it's just a matter of the comfort level. So I know we can open at least one and we'll work towards 2. And then we are going to be submitting a budget to expand Head Start and early Head Start, and that you'll see that through Audit and Finance in January. And then we're going to continue our partnerships with Kaleidoscope. We know that these are working families, and we need to make sure that we offer after-school care. So we're going to continue working on that to make sure that working with the Kaleidoscope team to make sure all sites are DSS licensed so they can serve 4-year-olds in the afternoon, because that's what our families need. And then the last is, I don't know if we have time for the video, but either way, I just want to, before I close this, I'm the one who tends to be standing up here, but it is not a solo effort. I want to thank Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Huggins for their support and guidance. I want to thank this planning team for attending weekly meetings. We had internal and external stakeholders. I want to thank volunteers from the Early Learning Department and other CCSD employees who helped with registration and session sign-in. And then I want to just do 3 quick shout outs to Maggie Dangerfield, Beth McGraw, and Jeff Beckwith. They led 3 teams that actually helped get the work done. So I just want to take a few minutes to thank them because it couldn't have been done without them. And if I'm available for any questions, thank you. Did you want to show the video or do you want to just?
We have time.
Okay, well, show the video. This is a nice summary of the event.
So this woman here, she knew then that addressing the needs of young children before they got to school was important. So this is a class of kindergarten, trying to create a kindergarten class. These are neighborhood kids in the neighborhood where I grew up. The 2 boys up front, one is my twin brother, Ronald, and the other one, of course, is Donald.
We're really excited to bring the community together around early childhood and kindergarten readiness. So CCSD is hosting its first Early Childhood Kindergarten Readiness Symposium. The first 5 years of life, 90% of the child's brain is developed, and so much input and experiences shape how the child's going to be the rest of their life. And so that is an optimal time. And so coming together with our community stakeholders to make sure we're providing those educational experiences so they're ready for kindergarten is vital.
When I talk with principals, elementary school principals, they tell me, say, Don, we have so many or too many of our kindergarten children coming into kindergarten not ready to learn how to read, not ready to learn how to do math, and we need to address that early in their lives. And so this is very important because it prepares our young children for be ready when they get into kindergarten, ready to learn.
Dr. Dent is the State Director of Early Childhood for the state of Mississippi. Mississippi has significant gains over the last 4 years in 4th grade reading. They have shown us how to close the gap, and early childhood has been one of their pivotal strategies. So we want to learn from them about how they have used early childhood to close the gap later on. And one of the things I know that they do is they involve a lot of stakeholders. It's not just the school system, it's not just providers, it's everybody working together. So she's going to kind of set the tone and give us a roadmap for how we can do this in South Carolina and specifically in Charleston County.
Then in 2015, Dr. Wright created the Office of Early Childhood and hired me as the director of the Office of Early Childhood, the first one they ever had, because turns out children do exist before they turn 5.
I'm here to talk about the Mississippi pre-K story, how we started a few years ago, almost 10 years ago, and to talk about some of the successes that we've had and how we got to where we are today and where we have to go forward. Really exciting that you get to talk to people that are interested in the same topic you're interested in and excited about the same topic. And so I'm really glad to share our message about Mississippi. Not a lot of people ask about our story. So I'm really honored.
It's the buffering that'll get you.
So today we brought the Beaufort County School District traveling preschool bus.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best part. We gotta see that.
It always buffers right at the cliffhanger.
Up to the Early Childhood Symposium to help others understand the importance of early childhood education. The bus goes out into the communities. It goes to neighborhood, churches, grocery store parking lots, and it allows for parents and children to come on the bus, receive a preschool classroom experience, all while we're also educating their parents on the importance of early childhood education.
Charleston County understands that we are not the sole provider of early childhood services and that we want to have a longer arm in the community and really partner with our providers. They may come from us in the public preschool, but they may be at home with their parents or they may be at a private provider, but ultimately they end up for the majority of children, they end up in our school system, and we want to make sure no matter where they come from, they're ready.
So this is one of the most critical things that we can do for our kids in our system. Make sure that when they come into kindergarten, that they are ready to learn. And that's what this symposium is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. You're welcome. So do we have any comments from the board members?
Yes, Ms. Foxworthy, being that I've been in the kindergarten classroom for over 16 and a half years, and I know the importance of early childhood and development. I would say on behalf of the board, we thank you for all that you do because your work is very much so appreciated, and the families in our communities, they appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Leah, can I have the question?
Yep.
How was the first preschool bus funded?
I'll have to get back to you. I'll reach out to them. I can't remember what they said. I have so many things in my mind right now, but I will find out.
But was it done publicly or was it?
I believe it was done publicly. I know this is their second kind of iteration of the bus. So I believe they wrote the first one, they wrote a grant, but now it's fully funded through the school district. But I can find out specifically.
Thank you.
I would say that their bus down in Beaufort has been there for quite some time. I think it's 20-something years. I
Yes.
spoke with the superintendent, I think it was last week up in the superintendent's roundtable about the bus, and it preceded him. So it's been there for a while, but we'll find out the
Yeah.
funding source.
I can do that.
Does anybody else have anything? No? Okay, we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is Audit and Finance Committee. We have a couple of action items that I'm going to, at this point, turn this over to Mr. Grabowski.
And just as a clarification of what we're doing, are these going to be discussed further at the board meeting? So basically what we're doing right now is just identifying which items are being presented to the board.
We will also take a vote on the two action items in this meeting as well as in the regular board meeting.
I don't think so. I think this is just information.
This is, we have 3 information only items, but we also have 2 action items in this meeting.
That's what I'm trying to clarify. The action items are going to be discussed by staff during the board meeting. So I'm just basically identifying what items we're bringing forth.
Mr. Grabowski, I can add some additional context. So yes, just the 2 action items get voted on during the committee of the whole, and at the full, we'll dive into more detail about any questions the board has.
That doesn't make sense. Could you say it again?
So we're going to vote in committee of the whole on the 2 items, and then we also vote again at the full board meeting. The items progress forward, and any questions that the board has, we can engage and answer those questions.
When?
We typically have done it at the full board meeting, but you're welcome to ask questions in the committee of the whole as well.
Because it seems like what we're doing is we're voting on to bring the motions forward to the board at the board meeting. So why would we, I mean, I fully understand. And I think, Leah, I think it'd be good that we discuss these items during the meeting of the whole, because it always seems like in the past, whenever you came up to one of these motions, it was read, stamped, voted, and on, and there was no discussion. So the way I see it is, if, as I understand it, that we do have the opportunity to discuss this during the committee of the whole. And I'm just asking if the other board members would like to do that.
That's
Because
the
I think
intention
that's,
here, yes.
since we have staff here already and we have time.
Once you go into the first action item, before we vote on it, I was gonna move that we discuss that first item, because I have things which we've already talked about that I want to bring up, especially about that first item. And then after we discuss it, I'll move for the vote, and then we'll take the vote, and then we'll go to the second item.
What is that vote? Is that vote to put it to the board agenda, or is
Yes.
that vote to approve?
Yes.
And the
Can I offer
information-
some context here?
I don't know who's talking.
That was Courtney. It took me a minute.
So the reason that we have committee of the whole is because the various committees do work in the off time between board meetings. And so committee of the whole is actually, I'm sorry, my daughter's sick. The committee of the whole is actually an opportunity to discuss all the things, because typically the meetings would not happen on the same day. Typically they'd be 2 weeks apart. So it's an opportunity to have discussion about what's coming out of the committees and advance those items to the regular board meeting. Additionally, if we vote unanimously on anything coming out of the committee of the whole, it goes to the consent agenda for the primary board meeting. So this actually is the place of discussion, where the regular board meeting, it typically is just a vote yes and move forward, because the discussion would have happened in the committee of the whole.
Thank you. And that's very helpful. And for time's sake, it would seem like the information side of it, any of the could be presented during the meeting, the regular board meeting. And then we wouldn't have to have that at the committee of the whole, since it's just information and not actionable. Is that agreeable, or am I overstepping?
I think
So-
we understand what you're saying. Sorry,
So we'll
Mr.
just
Renee.
move forward on the 2 action items.
That's typically how it works. And then the information items are presented, just
Discuss.
information item gets discussed if they need to be discussed later.
Right. Because they are I found the information items to be very, very important and very insightful, but I think.
I'm not opposed to, you're asking about having discussion surrounding the information items.
Correct.
Right, yeah, and then we'll also discuss those 2 action items. Okay.
So the first motion was a motion to allocate proceeds from the sale of the former McCollumville Middle School to the facilities management of the former Lincoln High School.
Okay, so I'm going to open that up for discussion at this time before we move to vote on it. And I'll go ahead and take the lead on that. It's my understanding that when the Lincoln High School was taken from the community there, the community was passionately opposed to that happening for it's an asset, a community asset. That's their only high school. It has historical significance and other areas of concern to that community. I'm one that I am always going to be in favor of less government and government intrusion into your lives. So I'm naturally going to side with the community on something like this. So, but that's not even an issue at this point of whether or not we can undo that. But the issue is about the funding. So there's some, Mr. Kennedy, if you would, I would like to find out a little bit of information about this issue in this situation. The reasoning given to that community for the removal of this high school from the community and then to bus those children to Wando was they seemed to be struggling with their academic scores, even though they were in a smaller classroom. I don't know that the problem that those children were facing was actually ever addressed The government's position was there's more resources available to these children at Wando. And that's why that hard vote was taken to go ahead and bus them. But what I would like to know is, was that decision really the right decision? And do we have the documentation and the scores and all of that to substantiate that claim? And I understand that the children that were impacted directly by this decision have already graduated, but hopefully graduated. But what about the children that did not go through that process of that school being removed from them and are now at Wando? Do we know how those children are doing? Did that decision actually have a positive impact on them? And especially considering that there are lease issues with the current tenants of that building.
So the request is for us to go back and analyze, I'm trying to verify the request, to analyze the impact on students because of the relocation. So we did look at this maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And you're right, the students that were initially transferred from McClellanville down to Wando have graduated. So they're no longer in the system. And then we did have a conversation, I think it was with one of the APs over there. But Anita, you have some background information on that.
I can. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, and thank you, Ms. Watley, for bringing that up. Pamela Jabbar, the former principal out at Lincoln, is now an associate principal at Wando High School, and she, along with members of the staff, Buffy Roberts, of whom is one in this room, the last 2 years, we've met with the District 1 Constituent Board, Reverend Colleton and team, to go over student progress, the exact things that you're asking. We've looked at student achievement, SAT and ACT scores. We've looked at AP availability. We've looked at various scholastic things, and Dr. Applesheimer is here in the room. She was part of the presentation as well. In addition, we've looked at extracurriculars and to what access students have that are being bused from District 1 up to Wando after the closure of Lincoln. So we'd be happy to take a look at the latest cohort of students that are zoned from District 1 or zoned in District 1, but now attend Wando and bring a brief report back to the board for your review, perhaps at the next committee of whole, if that sounds like an update to that information.
Yes, ma'am. I think that would satisfy my need to know.
Okay, and perhaps we could ask Mrs. Jabbar to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add to what Ms. Watley is saying.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's something that's not a constant. It's not a given. You have to request it. It just seems like constant monitoring will happen so that if that question is asked, you will be prepared to respond.
Yes, ma'am. We've done that annually, and the last was in the spring. Isn't that when Ms. Roberts or Dr. Applesheimer? So we've done that annually for the last 2 years, as long as I've been in this position with Mr. Colleton and the District 1 board. But we'll bring an update to this board.
But the key for this motion is just to move forward on the sale of something that the district's already entered into and taking some of the proceeds from the sale to pay off some of the obligations that we have underneath the sale.
That's my understanding. Yes, sir. A lot of the data you're asking for, Mrs. Watley and Mrs. Dunmire Roberson, is more available in the springtime. Once students take those cycles of exams. And so that's typically when we do those, but we can update any of the latest information we have, which will be minimal, but we can certainly bring that to the board at the next meeting.
So are we actually voting to sell Lincoln High School today?
No, what we're doing is we're approving the use of proceeds from the sale to offset some of the obligations that the district has as a result of the sale. In other words, we have to maintain the building for a certain period and step in at any time.
So is that property for sale at this time?
The contract's closing on the 14th.
Okay.
If I could maybe ask Mr. Rory to give some information.
Yes, sir. A little bit of context on that. So both campuses have been disposed of per the direction of the last board. The first is the one we're looking at now, and that's disposition of resources for selling McClellanville. The selling or the donation of Lincoln campus has also been made by the board. So we are going to be disposing of the Lincoln campus as well. We have maintained Lincoln to the minimum standards because we want to ensure that for the most as best as possible, our resources are spent on our active schools for kids that are in school. So we have not done any long-term capital maintenance on Lincoln High School. The use of the resources from the sale of McClellanville will help maintain that facility in a condition where we can turn it over next year.
So whether or not moving those children out of the school that community wanted to keep, whether or not the move is successful and their academic achievement is reflective of that, you're going to sell the property anyway.
The property has been sold. McClellanville Middle has been sold.
But
Lincoln has
Lincolnville-
been donated. You as the board certainly have the ability to change that decision, but that is the plan. That is the plan that was approved by the last board.
And so when you say that Lincolnville High School has been donated, what has it been donated to?
Lincoln High School has been donated to the Lincoln Regional Center. It's a nonprofit organization. They have a lease on the facility right now that was recently extended by the board until next year.
But they're having financial trouble, correct?
They have not put forward the financial resources yet to maintain the facility and take it over. So they asked for an extension on the lease.
To even maintain it?
Correct.
And so we're donating the entire property at $0 and they can't even pay the light bill right now.
At this point, that is correct.
Which is why I brought this whole thing up. That's why it's important to me when the community was so passionately opposed to the government stepping in and taking that facility from them and then busing their children to Wando High School, and it's not working out. Why are we not looking at maybe allowing that community to have back something that's so important to them, especially depending on what the academic achievement is showing? The excuse to move them out of there under the guise of they don't have the resources. Let's make sure that we're really making the right decision for that community and not just something that the district wants.
And wasn't there discussion of building a school up there again anyway?
Yes.
So
So
we're going to give away one building and build another one?
Yes.
So the rationale was that there were only 100 students in that high school at that remote location. So the process by the last board was to look at land closer to the population so that we can meet in the middle, essentially. That's why we bought land down Highway 17, equidistance between Wando High School and Lincoln High School, in the hope that we would draw more students from the south to create a situation where we could provide the educational opportunities for an ample number of students. That was the rationale.
Can you clarify what you mean by draw students from the south?
So that would be to look at having students that are interested in going to a school that's closer to where they live. So they would be interested in going some number of miles up Highway 17, but not double the distance up to Lincoln High School.
Interested in, as in they're volunteering to do so?
It was two options. One is to rezone students from District 2 to that school, and the other option would be to look at creating a magnet situation where students and families would want their kids to go. They would want to go there because of the programs that are offered in a magnet opportunity.
And if you don't have the students to support Lincoln, what makes us think that we'll have the students to support this new school?
I think, Mr. Kelly, so that is I think there's a committee that's being formed to explore that. The district has purchased land, as Jeff indicated, that's between Arendar and Mount Pleasant, with the intent of exploring how do we would potentially create a new school that would be amenable to both families up in the upper part of 17, McClellanville, Arendar, and the upper part of Mount Pleasant. And so that work has not proceeded yet. It's in the planning. So we don't have the answers to that, other than the fact that we have purchased land in that area for the purpose of exploring that.
Doesn't that seem a bit out of order to you, sir?
Well, it's now raising questions for me about contracts and who's getting the contracts.
Got two questions here. If the order being the order, how?
As in you fired before you aimed. We purchased land before we know if we needed.
So as Mr. Rowley said, these are decisions that the prior board made. So I think it was 2015 that, is that right?
Yes, sir. It was May of 16.
Okay, 16.
If I'm-
And then
May of
at some
16.
point, a decision was made to go into this arrangement by the board with this nonprofit, as Jeff has indicated. And at some point, the board decided to purchase land in McClellanville, excuse me, the land up 17 with the potential of creating a new school. So those are the steps that got us to where we are right now.
And to the point of contracts, to answer that question, the only authorization at this point has been the design contract for the high school that was authorized several years ago in the phase four sales tax program. So there is design money that has been allocated, advanced design money for the high school design.
I think that we all agree that there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen, but can we, so that in the essence of time, restate the requests of us today?
Yeah,
You,
that'd be helpful.
Okay, so
The
we're
motion-
revisiting.
The motion is to allocate proceeds from the sale of the former McCollumville Middle School to facilitate management for the former Lincoln High School.
And that sale has actually gone through, like we have a check in the bank kind of thing.
No, it's going through, it has gone through. The closing is.
It'll be closing this week, later this week.
December 14th.
so we are having to pay for bills that someone we sold it to cannot.
Or
pay.
leasing it to.
So leasing it to cannot afford to pay.
Right.
And if we don't pay those bills,
If we don't pay those bills, the facility will fall in complete disrepair. So we're trying to hold that facility together, keep it climate controlled so that we don't end up with a situation where it's not a serviceable building in the end.
Mr. Burway, I want to add some context too about the, just because there seems to be questions around why we would be paying the bills or even leasing it to someone who hasn't been able to pay. This is because this was such a big part of their community. It seemed the right thing to do, and it still does seem the right thing to do, to allow some community use from the building. And so the gentleman who's leasing it did bring a plan. He brought plans, and he's been shopping his plan around to other folks in the community to see if they can make some multi-use of the building. And we are just, as a board, giving him time to get that in line. It's not and we agreed that we would maintain certain aspects of the building. And so it's not to the point that some of you all have made, since you believe that it was important to have this school in the community, because we couldn't keep that school open, or the board at that time determined it couldn't keep that school open based on the numbers of enrollment, it's sort of coming behind it and doing some good by allowing the community to do something with it on the back end.
How much money are we talking about? I mean, the reason I'm asking is that on the agenda, this wasn't a hot button item on my screen, and so I'm not prepared to have looked at this ahead of time.
Dr. Temple, I've done a little digging of my own, which is why this has raised a flag. Mhm.
So do we have an answer to that question? How much money are we talking about?
Oh, sorry, I have a printout for it.
Oh.
$325,000.
How much?
$325,000.
And then using, I think the estimate was about 65 to 70,000 for the new, or to upgrade the air conditioning, to keep the air conditioning working.
So we're continuing to work on the estimates for that. In the end, it's $310,000. And all of those resources would be used between a water well and HVAC. I'm very confident that we'll need all of that money. We've not put any resources in that facility from a long-term capital maintenance perspective since it was closed.
So we're selling it for $325,000.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, 325 is the sale price in the McClellanville building
Yes, sir.
you're going to put 310 into it.
into Lincoln.
Yes, sir.
No, into McClellanville.
Yeah, upkeeping the maintenance.
Of Lincoln, though. We're taking the money from McClellanville and moving it to,
Here,
that's what's up for discussion, right?
can we pass this?
Sure. Yeah. Am I understanding that correctly, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there a motion that's going to be made on this item?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Cabral, if I may. So if we were to take a look at the agenda for the committee of the whole for this item, for the Audit and Finance Committee, there are two items here. This one, what we're talking about, the allocation of funds, and then the approval of projects greater than 250,000. So it's listed on the Audit and Finance, listed on the Committee of the Whole as an information item. So it's
Not the District 1 allocation of funds. That's listed as an action item.
No, is it?
so
It is for action and we need a motion. We actually, yeah, anyway.
Yes, ma'am, we will have a motion once we get done discussing.
So again, if we just understand, let's just take a look at the agenda, make sure that we're okay, because if we don't get it right, then when we do the motion, it's going to be a problem. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you take a look at item 4A, it says information, and it's in the background, it says the following items were reviewed at the December Audit and Finance Committee meeting and will be submitted to the board at the December meeting, the December board meeting. And so it lists those two items. So it's according to the agenda, it's perfectly fine to go into discussion at the Committee of the Whole on these items, but there's no mechanism on this agenda to allow for a board vote as I see it, until we get into the board meeting.
To the regular meeting.
According to the agenda I'm looking at, the action items is District 1 allocation of funds, which I think we're pretty much done discussing, was going to bring up for a vote.
Well,
Well, it would be a motion to move it on to the board for a vote at the board meeting.
it is an action item for the regular board meeting on which we are currently receiving information.
Right. Okay. So the motion is to move this over to the regular board meeting.
Correct. I would be I make a motion to move this action item to allocate proceeds from the sale of the former McClellanville Middle School to the facilities manager and for the former Lincoln High School to the board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
So the items automatically go over to the board.
Right. They automatically go to the board.
Audit and finance.
Correct.
Yeah, any action item coming out of the Audit and Finance Committee that get placed on Committee of the Whole automatically go over to the regular board meeting automatically. And so that's why, and when it says type of action here, it says information on the type. If you could vote on it, it would say action.
I was misinformed. So
Well, we're learning here, so it's good. So that's the process.
okay.
Okay.
So may we ask Mr. Grabowski to withdraw his motion?
I would withdraw the motion that I made.
And a second.
For clarification's sake, I'm not sure why this is occurring in the way that it is now, but we've actually always voted on anything that said it was for action in the Committee of the Whole. That does not authorize it. It then gets voted on again in the business meeting if it did not get unanimous consent. And so which is also why we desperately need to have a parliamentarian here, but we have always voted on whatever was for action, and we don't decide whether or not we do or don't. We can choose to withdraw its
Also, what
status for
I
action.
understand.
Well,
Ms. Waters and I are in agreement on that. That's the way I also understand it.
So any item that's not Audit and Finance Committee, any item that's not Audit and Finance Committee, that's an action item, gets voted on in the Committee of the Whole. All Audit and Finance Committee items go directly to the school board without a vote in the Committee of the Whole. So that's how we've conducted the section for, in this case, section 4 with Audit and Finance.
And I think if you look at the background, it clearly says the following items were reviewed at the December Audit and Finance Committee meeting and will be submitted to the board at the December meeting. So this is really just for information and for discussion. We just have this witching hour in which we have two meetings that follow each other. So theoretically, we would be able, in the future, we would have a week or two to discuss this amongst ourselves to see if there were any problems perceived. And then if we needed to, we could change some of these motions before we had the board motion. That's why you would have had the time. But this is one of those witching hours where as we go from here to there to here, which I think is good to have the discussion. And then when we go into the regular board meeting, make the vote based upon the discussion that we just had. But the committee discussed this in depth as part of their obligations as the Committee for Audit and Finance.
So two quick questions then, Mr. Kennedy, is what you just described the process, is that part of our district policy or is that just the way that it's always been done? And
I think, let me verify, I think that's a part of the policy that relates to the committee of the whole and board meetings. I will have to, is that correct?
Okay. And then the second piece is to the Judge Seymour. Is it improper for us to have an item listed on our agenda that's titled action item that we take no action on?
The way I'm reviewing this agenda, this particular item is for information. The information, the action is in relation to the background, the action would be taken, that the Audit and Finance Committee reviewed it, and their action was to bring it to the full board meeting. And that's what the action means. It's a colon, and so this is what the committee did. They are going to bring it to the board. So for purposes of this meeting, it's for information.
I just
And-
want to make sure that we're not changing our agenda
Correct,
in the middle of the meeting.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So are we discussing the other items? Are we ready to move forward?
Yeah, I think we should move forward onto the second actionable item for information purposes and discussion. And that is in the, and I thought it was well put, in the spirit of transparency, we were all provided a list of all expenditures over $250,000 that were going to be made, and staff presented and defended each position to the committee. And what you must realize on most of these items is they were all approved by prior boards and have all been budgeted, some from budgets from like last year. And
Yes, thank you, Mr. Grabowski. So the board approval for procurement items over 250,000 is to provide transparency as well as to engage in any questions you all may have about the items or the procurement process. These are contracts that are tethered to bodies of work that have already been approved and budgeted in the fiscal year. So this is just bringing a level of transparency down a little more granular to the actual contracts.
Mr. Grabowski, do you want to provide any kind of brief?
it's an extensive list. It was an extensive education into how capital programs work and how the sales tax phases are used to pay for each item. The good news was that they were all at budget or under budget. There was nothing that would increase any expenditures or increases to the budget, which seems pretty impressive when you look at some of these. A lot of the expenses were for management, project management. They were just, paying off our final payments on certain contracts. There was one change order, which you would have expected would have affected the budget, but apparently it was covered within the budget review. So that's the good work by the staff. Then you look down phase 3 of the Wando High School roof. I mean, that's just a payment under the contract. So once again, most of these all of them were approved by prior boards covered under budgets. And, through the spirit of transparency, they are producing the expenses over $250,000, which is a requirement.
Is everyone satisfied?
Yes.
Now, the items that I have listed as information items are the 45-day enrollment counts for CE Williams, monthly capital projects report, and the monthly financial update.
And once again, since they're for information purposes, I think this would be fine for the board meeting as long as we can ask questions, or if you can ask questions, because definitely on the 45-day count at the committee meeting, there were an awful lot of questions about how that report was produced. And then the staff can give a wonderful outlay of how we're doing as a monthly financial report. But I do think there will be some questions when the information is given on the 40-day report.
Okay, unless there's any objections, I am going to move for the adjournment of the meeting.
I so move.
All right. We'll see you back. Madam Chairman, do you have a time for them to be back?
5 minutes.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess and then we will reconvene in executive session first.
No,
We're not going to do,
well, that won't be the first item on the agenda.
okay. So we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
The December 12th Board of Trustees regular meeting will come to order at 4:15. Do I hear a motion to accept the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
A second? Any questions? Cast your vote, and as soon as the cast is on the screen, please confirm your vote. The motion passes. The next item is approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as received for the board meeting of November the 14th and then the special board meeting of November the 18th?
I actually would like to bring up a discussion on one of the items in the minutes, if
Well,
nothing.
I think we have to have the motion first so that we can discuss them.
So the motion is to,
Approve the minutes as received. Is there a motion?
sure, I make a motion to approve them as received, but I want to discuss an item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there questions?
Yes.
And is your question on the regular meeting or the special called meeting?
One moment, let me pull it up, where the I thought I had it in my paperwork. It is not the special called meeting. It is on the meeting that we were not in attendance for. November the 14th, correct.
And your question?
I am scrolling to it, one moment. On item number 11, there were two actions taken, action A and then action B. And under B, there are items 1 and item 2. If for nothing else, I want this discussion on the record publicly about, I'm going to read it. It's action B is school security part 1, motion to approve. Number 1, engage the services of a private security company to assign armed security officers at schools currently lacking a full-time school resource officer, SRO, due to law enforcement staffing constraints. And then item 2, approve the allocation of $1.2 million in fund balance for the purchase of weapons detectors for all high schools and programs.
If I may make a point, we are discussing approving the minutes or not. And if that's what happened at the meeting, then we can approve it. But if you would like these 2 items addressed, may we put them on the agenda for January?
I would like those 2 items addressed, and pushing them over to January is fine.
Okay.
As long as we address them.
Any other questions about the minutes? All right, cast your vote and then please confirm. The motion passes. Item 2, do I hear a motion to convene executive session to consider items covered by attorney-client privilege?
I make a motion to convene an
Pam,
executive
I
session.
think we jumped.
Excuse
to
me.
get Item D.
Pledge of allegiance.
Oh, so sorry. Yes, we need to do that. If you'll stand and join us for a moment of silence, and then Mr. Grabowski will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I'd ask you all to join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag that represents our great nation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we will go to item 2. Is there a motion to convene executive session to consider items covered by the attorney-client privilege?
I make a motion to convene into executive session.
Is there a second?
I second.
And a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
We will return promptly. motion to reconvene open session?
I make a motion.
So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any questions? May we reconvene with a voice vote, or does that have to be recorded? Okay. All right, we are reconvened. So we are on item 5A. Do I hear a motion in reference to that?
Yes. I motion to grant the parents' appeal, decline to adopt the decision of D2 constituent board, and place the student at Daniel Jenkins Academy until successful completion of the program. The student will be placed on probation for the balance of the school year.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Please cast your vote. When your vote shows, please confirm. Ms. Watley seconded, yes. Oh, excuse me. Ms. Waters, do you want to verbally vote?
Yes, it didn't populate for me. I vote yes.
And the motion passes. We are now on to item 5B. Is there a motion for 5B?
I'd like to make a motion. Excuse me. I make a motion that the student remain enrolled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year and waive tuition. And then that the parents can submit another application for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you.
Second it.
Any discussion? All right, we'll call for the question.
I vote yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes. We are on to item 6, public comments, and Ms. Bailey as vice chair will handle that.
Good afternoon. Anyone making an in-person public comment can approach the podium as I call your name. First up, we have Sean Smalls. He's not here. Okay. Next person up is Natrice Henricks.
Hello, good evening, CCSD board members, Mr. Kennedy, CCSD staff members, and visitors. My name is Natrice Henriquez. I'm the principal of Greg Mathis Strata High School. The purpose of me, my staff members, a student, and a parent being here this afternoon is to introduce Greg Mathis Strata High School's team to you the new board of directors, and to establish the core reason for us once again soliciting school space to house our school. Since 2015, we have been soliciting the school district for an available school building to house our school. We're open to sharing building space with another school in any of your underutilized school buildings, should this model be an option. Our school is positioned as a viable alternative for students across CCSD who have a higher probability of failing or dropping out of school because of wide proficiency gaps. As of March 2018, we have been operating as an approved alternative education campus and have empowered the most vulnerable at-risk students with an opportunity to experience meaningful success and re-engage in school. We have graduated over 85% of qualified seniors yearly since 2016 by offering developmentally appropriate social and emotional learning opportunities and small class sizes where every student is able to connect with a trusted adult. As a small school of approximately 60 students, our EFA operating budget for the 2021-2022 school year was $914,507.79. Of this amount, we paid salaries, rent, and all operating expenses. Our rent and utilities total $96,000 per year, and it has proven to be increasingly difficult to operate the additional services that we would like to offer our students. However, with scant resources, Greg Mathis Strada High School has nevertheless made remarkable progress in serving our most vulnerable students. Over the past 7 years, we have improved the financial management of our school and increased student achievement. On average,
I'm
our
sorry
students—
to interrupt, but in fairness to others that have been told they only have 2 minutes, I'm afraid your 2 minutes are up.
Okay. Please refer to the letter that I sent to you last week. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And we appreciate receiving the letter.
Next is Ms. Erica Great.
I think she was.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Dietran Young.
I'm Deidre Young. I'm at Great Mathis Charter High School, and I just wanted to ask if you possibly can help these at-risk students with a bigger space. And I know y'all have a budget, but please see if y'all can possibly help these students. And I am one of those students that had a second chance. So I know what it's like to have people believe in you and help you. And with education, we at risk students, we need that.
Thank you, ma'am. The next person is Paul Jacobs. Is Paul Jacobs here? Okay. Next, we'll go to online comments that have been written, and I just want to read a few because I believe that everybody's voice is important and they need to be heard. We have one from Ms. Carol Temple. Says, "Dear board members, I am surprised about the 2 algebra goals. The reason is that I know from personal and professional experience that some students are not ready for Algebra 1 in middle school. Case in point, my son is an engineer and is brilliant in math. He was not ready for algebra in 8th grade. However, in 9th grade, he took both algebra and geometry and went on to take all of the upper level math courses offered in high school and college. There is some things to be said about kids being developmentally ready for math concepts. I'm questioning having 2 goals so focused on Algebra 1. What about addressing math literacy expectations, accomplishments by 8th grade? Algebra 1 could be sub-goals. Your thoughts and rationale. Regards, Dr. Carol Temple."
And the next one is from Joan Chard. It says, South Carolina school districts are not doing well at all. Per Post and Courier Sarah Gregory, the majority of the $3 billion federal pandemic relief money must be spent in or on poor Black and Hispanic students. Their first mistake was not following federal government's stipulation, since they spent barely 1% of pandemic money on disadvantaged students. Their second mistake was not following Beaufort District's model of intentionally targeting student programs, using data verifying programs for reaching neediest students. The fact that Blacks overwhelmingly had chosen virtual computer instruction may have hindered Blacks' achievements, with whites overwhelmingly choosing effective in-class instruction. Beaufort focused on past virtual learners, doubling off-site after-school programs, partnering with churches, nonprofit groups, and hiring qualified coordinators. ESSER 3 requires districts spend 20% remedying students' COVID learning losses. Just 15% of ESSER funds has been touched, leaving $1.9 billion from that pot alone. Despite that, in only 2 years, South Carolina's remaining $2.5 billion disappears. Their third mistake was never putting 2021 plans into operation, as suggested by the trivial 15% of ESSER 3 learning loss money spent. Districts are now evaluating their programs for purposes of elimination and expansion. Revisions are due December 2022, but some districts never activated 2021 paper plans. Their fourth mistake is not having uniform accounting rules. So overlapping vague category descriptions may make tracking impossible in deciding programs to success. Where is our South Carolina educational leadership in our COVID learning loss programs? The third is Deetra Young. Hi, CCSD Board of Trustees. I am writing to ask if you can find it in your heart and budget to please give our at-risk students at Greg Mathis Charter High School a building that we can use to better educate, support our students. These students have come a long way with their education as well as their personal lives. I'm the Ingenuity Interventionist Behaviorist at the school. Thank you. Nancy Lewis. Congrats to all the new board members. I'm hoping you can make some changes in CCSD. I have a 7th grader at Moultrie and I was helping her with her social studies. She had to watch a video from Vocabulary and it emphasized whites being racist all throughout history. I think it's a bad idea to make generalizations about any race. The lesson was an imperialism, but did not seem to teach the facts. I'm aware that there are other sites CCSD uses that slip in critical race theory. It doesn't jump out first, but if it's there are books in elementary schools sexualizing children and teaching them about being activists. I hope this board will look into this, and I hope schools will return to teaching critical thinking skills and emphasizing academics. I know you are just having your first meeting. I just want this subject to be on your radar. Vocabulary has no place in our schools. Thank you for all you do. And we have Catherine Jenkins. Greetings, CCSD Board of Trustees. I'm Ms. Jenkins from Greg Mathis Charter School. Our school is seeking a larger school building which would provide more opportunities for our schools, such as the ability to expand our academic program to include more than one teacher in each content area, reduce teacher burnout and improve teacher, student, and parent satisfaction, increase class sizes so flexible student groupings can be utilized for instruction and students can be more comfortable, provide space for various extracurricular activities, allow the school space for programs such as ROTC, mentorship, and apprenticeship, room to provide for vocational training programs, allow us to have an indoor gymnasium and an appropriate stadium, equipping playing field to allow students to have ample opportunities for vital physical activities and various sports activities. Thank you for your consideration regarding this request. And Jacqueline Storts. Good morning or good evening. I'm writing to share my view in support of creating
a school building for Greg Mathis Charter High School. I presently serve as the instructional coach at Greg Mathis Charter High School. As an educator of 35 years, I have witnessed firsthand the importance of a child's school experience. Having served as a high school teacher for 17 years, principal, assistant, superintendent, and ultimately retiring as superintendent, educating the whole child is the key to sending our students into the world with skills they need to succeed. The high school experience is one that is forever in our memories. For some, it was a time of pure excitement as clubs, teams, performances, and events shaped the way in which we viewed the future. For others, it was a time to find one's voice, one's direction, one's purpose, while ironing out one's insecurities. Regardless of one's high school situation, every child is deserving of the same opportunity to set their futures in motion. For most, that opportunity requires a good deal of support, which we know comes in various forms. We as educators are keenly aware that all students come to us with different skills and different needs. We are changed with providing a well-rounded education, which includes so much more than academics. At minimum, all students should be provided a facility to accommodate that high school journey, which is ever so important in shaping their future. Larger classrooms lead to more effective instructions. More teachers mean more academic choices to create a well-rounded character. Teams foster a sense of camaraderie, honoring those soft skills so necessary in today's job market. All children should attend a school, a traditional building with all the trimmings of which they can be proud. Greg Mathis Charter High School is a safe haven for many in need of support. Although our students may have experienced obstacles during their short journey, they are no less deserving of a building where they may learn a trade, join a team, take a science class where there is a true lab experience, benefit from physical education, eat in a designated lunchroom, and attend assemblies and pep rallies, to name just a few of the true high school experiences our GMCHS students should enjoy.
In all fairness, 2 minutes is up.
Okay.
If you go to the next one.
Okay, the last one is Narda Young. And this is quick. Having been a member of the Greg Mathis Charter High School family for the past 6 years, I've experienced firsthand the far-reaching impacts of having such a limited space. It is a greater disservice to our students to be deprived of some of the basic infrastructural components that should constitute a typical high school. Being in such a small space limits some aspects of the instructional process and our ability to provide our students with a wholesome and holistic educational experience. Having additional space will provide us with ability to expand our academic courses offerings to include fine arts and performing arts, expand STEM programs and workforce certification programs. Additional space would also enable us to have an indoor gymnasium and an appropriate stadium-equipped playing field, which would allow students to have adequate opportunities for vital physical activities. Let us not further disadvantage our students here at the Greg Mathis Charter High School by continuing to box us in and restricting our growth. Please provide us with the space we need. Thanks in advance. And I want to say that I read every last one because each and every person's voice matters and it counts. And it is very appropriate that even if it's online, all voices need to be heard. And these statements are on the CCSD website if anybody else wants to see them. Thank you.
And let us assure those that made public comments in person and online that they will be addressed and referred to the appropriate committee and or staff member. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to item 7A, District 1 allocation funds. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll defer to Mr. Barowie and Ms. Barnett for this particular item.
Hi, good evening, Board Chairman McKinney and board members of trustees. My name is Angela Barnett. I'm Director of Planning and Real Estate. So I'm going to briefly touch on this item. There was a lot of discussion in the committee of the whole meeting. So I'm just going to really briefly touch on this. The board, of course, approved the sale of McCollumville Middle in October of 2022. We are set to close on the property, of course, December 14th this week. The terms of the contract with the town of McCollumville was that essentially they would continue to service water to Lincoln High School, and we would continue to dispel of the wastewater from McCollumville for 1 year. At the close of that 1 year, they will cap both of those, and we will then have to service water to Lincoln, and we will continue to utilize our spray field to dispel of waste. The Lincoln Regional Center, as you have been told, currently have a facility lease agreement. The board granted that, and they also granted it an extension. That extension ends May 1st of 2023. At that time, the property is to be transferred to the Lincoln Regional Center. We currently are looking at allocating the funds from the sale of McCollumville Middle to continue the facility's management expenditures that we continue to incur from that facility.
I have a clarifying question. We have to have a motion before we can have discussion.
Ma'am, can I just add a couple of things to the
Please.
earlier discussion? Contractual matters, the entire contractual matter for this was held in executive session when the board voted to dispose of this property. So we are not able, in keeping with our legal requirements, to talk about details related to the offers made on this property. But I will say that it was on MLS since October of last year and continues to be on MLS, just as an indication of the interest in that property. The second point is that at McCollumville Middle Campus, we're expending approximately $90,000 a year every year that we have that property, and it's not used as a school at this point. So that will result in a savings to the district once we sell this property.
I have to make a motion to the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chairman, to allocate the proceeds from the sale of the former McCollumville Middle School to the facility management for the former Lincoln High School.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second. And I just have
Are
a
there
quick,
questions?
I just have a quick question. When the sale of McClellanville Middle School was, and I'm not going to get into the details of the contract, but when the sale was agreed upon in the what year did you determine the sale price?
The final agreement on that was October of this year.
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am. The final terms were negotiated in October and brought to the board for approval just 2 months ago.
Wow.
And as I said, it's been on MLS since October of 2021.
That's the McClellanville campus or the?
Yes, sir, McCollumville.
Is Lincoln currently listed as for sale?
I don't think it is.
No.
It is not.
Okay.
Are there other questions? So we have a motion second, no other questions. You may cast your vote. Ms. Waters, would you like to vote by voice?
Miss Waters had to drop off to take care of her daughter. Can I ask one more? Rats, never mind. So I do have a question. It's a bit of a moot point at this point, but
I'm sorry, I don't think you can ask a question right now.
oh, okay.
We're to vote. And the motion passes. Thank you. On to item 7B, approval of projects for greater than $250,000. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The list before you is a list of 7 items that we put forward on the procurement worksheet of of contracts and procurements greater than 250,000. The projects listed here are largely facilities management and capital projects, as well as some facilities maintenance. The worksheet before you, it lists the vendor names, a brief detail of what the particular item is, the amount, and then what our solicitation or our procurement process was for each individual item. And I'll answer whatever questions you have.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the projects on the attached list.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. What are the questions? Are there any? Hearing no questions, we'll call for the vote. If you'll cast your vote and then check for its accuracy. The motion carries. We are on to item 7C, 45-day enrollment counts. Ms. Milne.
So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'll open that item as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So this is this is a report reflecting the 45-day average daily membership, which is different than enrollment. So Ms. Milne will dive into the details of the 45-day membership, average daily membership, and I'll defer to Ms. Angela Barnett to discuss enrollment to try to distinguish the two and for the purposes of discussion for today. Ms. Milne?
Good evening. The report that you have in front of you is a direct representation. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is a direct representation of what is shown on the State Department of Education's website as our 45 ADM. We provide a comparison of the past 5 years in addition to a comparison to prior year 135. So you can see that in total, our student count or the ADM count increased by 48, and our ADM compared to prior year 135 increased by 182. The two significant changes on this are the categorization of students between high school and vocational, which is showing that our students are heading towards their college career readiness and by being in the voc programs. And that funding gets the 1.2 weighting per student versus the 1.0, which is paid for all of our traditional kindergarten, primary, elementary, and high school students. The other significant change is the growth in our 3- and 4-year-old programs, which you heard descriptions earlier from Kim Foxworth. And that represents the return to a normal class size, which they have not been able to do until this year. So, and they're going to continue adding programs, so that will continue to grow.
Thank you, Ms. Milne. I'd also like to add that what we use this report for in the district, the state uses the average daily membership to assign weights, and that's how our funding is derived. This is different from enrollment. One category that the state did not fund this year was dual enrollment, largely because our base allocation changed. The state legislation changed on how we receive funds from the state. Ms. Barnett, would you like to cover enrollment?
I'm going to just very briefly touch on enrollment because I literally could spend an hour with you going through each district to kind of give you a brief snapshot. So when you get ready for that, you let me know. Mainly what I'm going to go over is just in very brief about how we look at enrollment projections. So every year we look at enrollment projections, and what we're mainly doing is looking at survival cohort methodology, which looks at the grade progression and assigns a ratio, and it's based off of historical enrollment. We also look at the 45-day data in a way that we're trying to see what happens with that class size from day 7 to day 45. The day 45 data is also used in a unique way that we're able to take that day 45 data and we geocode every student that's in our district. That lets us know where they are. That then generates another piece of data that we use in enrollment projections, and that's our live and attend analysis. That live and attend analysis really lets us see who's attending our school, who is leaving a certain attendance zone and maybe attending another school, and who's coming from a different attendance zone and attending that school. So as you get into your roles, you'll get that document, and we usually give a brief snapshot of that document also. You'll receive that. We have those documents are posted on a yearly basis going all the way back to 2017. So there's a lot of information there, but we also utilize that. Some of the other things we look at, every quarter we meet with the local municipalities to gather what is being built in the areas. We're looking at planned developments, and we're also looking at future projections. From that actually gives us a student yield count that we're able to actually look at the growth of how many of those units are being built and apply that every year. That's just another piece of information we use. One of the things that I hear a lot of people say is we're growing, we're growing, we're growing. And a lot of the things that I always like to reiterate is the fact that we do have areas inside of Charleston County that are growing significantly, but we also have areas that have been very flat. We also have different demographic pockets, and that's why, you know, it could be a whole conversation that even though we have lots of schools and we're seeing lots of growth, they're just not attending our schools. I like to say that D20 is a good representation of that when we look at how many new structures are going up at apartment complexes, but those are not the children that attend our schools. So we're looking at all of the different factors that go into those planned developments also, and the population that they're gauged to. We also look at school programming and rezoning. That's one of those things that we look at, things like Academic Magnet and the unique programming they have. We look at other schools that may have a STEMS program, an arts program. All of those things we can look at and really just determine if there's trend analysis that shows that more students are attending those schools. And then we ultimately look at an empirical understanding of what is going on in each one of these demographic areas. And that really tells us a lot. Ultimately, we do, like I said, we do enrollment projections once a year. And I like to say that we then, after we complete that process, the following month, we then do what's our future forecast. Then we look at all of that information and we're able to give a 5-year forecast. We used to look at forecast all the way to 10 years. But as we can all see, living in Charleston County, things are changing so fast. We realized that that data, once we looked at it, it kind of wasn't giving us a true picture. Enrollment projections are used to establish our GOF budgets, allocations. We look at it for building capacity, which drives F&M and capital building programs. We also look at it for it sets our attendance zones. So we really have to stay on top of what we're doing with this data and how we are utilizing it. And overall, we're looking at it in great detail. The data can even yield more than what we're seeing, but what we're doing right now is really getting a good snapshot of what's needed to set us up on a path for success.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any closing remarks?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Any questions?
I know what was brought up in committee, one of the concerns was that the way this report was drafted, now that we've gone to single district representation, it's kind of hard for us to figure out what districts are growing and what good districts are not growing. And I know there was a lot of concern raised by the committee that we're not capturing all the students that may have been lost during the pandemic. Have you been taking any further actions in looking how to revise this report so it addresses that issue?
So a couple of responses there. So in terms of the students that may have been lost during the pandemic, so staff has been tasked to review that, and so that will happen. The report itself, the ADM report, one that Ms. Milne presented, that has to be submitted to the State Department in that format because they use that report to for the state funding to all school districts. So that's consistent throughout all school districts throughout the state. But then to your point about the new lines with board members, we have not discussed that. We can take a look at identifying specific schools and specific new district areas and see how we might report that. But also we have to also continue with the traditional constituent district 1, 2, 4, 10, et cetera, because that drives a lot like Angela indicated, that drives a lot of decisions. So we'll look at it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. We will move on then to the next item. Item 7D, the monthly capital projects report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to defer to Ms. Joyce Costello to review our monthly capital projects report.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Good evening, Board and Superintendent Kennedy. I'd like to present the October 2022 capital projects report. Our revenue collections for the 2017 through 2022 capital building program, phase 4, were 2.8 million above our 2% financial model projection. The expenditures for October for the 2010 through 2016 capital building program, phase 3, were 0. That program is actually winding down. The expenditures for the 2017 through 2022 capital building program, phase 4, were $2.7 million. The expenditures for the 2023 through 2028 capital building program, phase 5, were $4.4 million. The expenditures for the 2023 through 2028 capital building program, phase 5, projects funded with long-term debt were 0. Other programs to report on are the fixed cost of ownership program for fiscal year 23. This is an annual program, and the funding was the projects and the funding were approved on February 28th of 2022, and that program has been underway. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We'll entertain any questions, please.
Any follow-up from committee?
No, everything's right on track.
We're grateful for that. Thank you. All right, on to item 7E, the monthly financial update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this report is, it's a snapshot of our revenue and expenditures year to date in comparison to this point in time last year. So as of right now, our revenues are up $11 million, largely because of the new state funding formula passed this past legislative session. Our local tax revenue came in about $4.8 million higher as well. So we're faring and tracking about $15 million over, $15.8 million over where we were this time last year for revenue. For our expenses are tracking as far as the FY23 budget is concerned. In that budget, we built in salary incentives for teachers and additional compensation incentives as well. That said, we're about $3 million higher in our salaries this year versus last year, which is and benefits, which is driving the cost difference from this point in time this year to last year. Overall, we are in good condition as a district financially, and we'll keep tracking this. And what will happen at the turn of the calendar year, we'll begin to project out where we see ourselves ending for this actual fiscal year regarding our budget to actuals, and we'll present that information then. What questions do you have, please?
Any follow-up from committee with questions or comments?
The committee is looking forward to January when we start going into the itemized side of the budget where we will be responsible for. So a lot of what is being discussed has been addressed by other boards. And what I can say is they've done a very good job in keeping the other boards on track with what they approved. So I hope that we see the same thing in the upcoming year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we are on to item 8A. The South Carolina School Board Association, we need a delegate to represent our entire region for a 4-year term on that. And I am moving to nominate Darlene Dunmeyer Roberson for that position.
Second that.
Thank you. Any questions? Prior to our meeting, just so you know, the entire board received the description of that position, and it's well known and that she's qualified.
I do have a question. I
Yes,
can't overstate her, Darlene's qualification, most certainly. Ms. Dunbar, are you on a 4-year or 2-year term? And does that impact how this would work?
I'm on a 2-year term, but I plan to win another 4 years.
It's just, I guess, a procedural question. Can we have someone not on the board representing in the event that someone did?
We could appoint a new delegate. Any other questions? All right. You'll cast your vote and then confirm its accuracy.
And for the record, I'm on a 2-year term as well. That's what made me think of it.
Thank you, and the motion passes. We are now on to the next item, 8B, the appointment of a Head Start Board liaison. And I move that we appoint Carlotta Bailey as the Head Start Board liaison. We received those qualifications prior to the meeting as well. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any questions? All right, if you would cast your vote. And then when it appears, if you will confirm its accuracy. The motion carries. We are now to item 9A. Do I hear a motion to convene the executive session to consider items covered by attorney-client privilege for information only?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. A voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to reconvene open session?
I make a motion to reconvene.
Second.
Thank you. Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Closing items, item 11 on our agenda. The next committee of the whole meeting is January the 9th, 2023. And the next board meeting is January 23rd, 2023. Do I hear a motion for?
I have just one slight question because I think there was some confusion in a bunch of emails and maybe staff can, or Dr. Kennedy, you can clean this up. When is the next finance committee meeting? Because I think it's scheduled a meeting during when the district was closed.
So the next finance meeting is going to be the second Tuesday in January.
Second Tuesday in January.
Yeah, so let me, that's going to be the 10th.
Okay, great.
And and that is not the standard. The standard is the
Right,
first
right.
Tuesday, but the first Tuesday is the day we get back from.
That's what
day
I
after we
thought.
get
That's
back
why
from
I thought
holiday.
there was some confusion going on with a lot of these dates because of January. Thank you very much.
Are there other questions about dates?
We had some discussion about timing of the committee of the whole. Is this an appropriate
Oh, yeah.
time to discuss that?
Well, we have a motion to adjourn. And was there a second?
I didn't catch it. Who
Okay.
motion? Who gave a motion?
All right. So without a second, we don't have a motion. But I can't discuss something that's not on the agenda. Maybe we can address it later among ourselves and with staff.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Do I take a vote?